Hi there, Glocal citizens. Welcome back to the podcast that inspires a borderless mindset around manifesting a new world. I am your host, Florence Adu, coming to you from a cool and calm evening, still here in Accra. I haven't really talked about raining season lately. I thought we were getting out of it, but we had a lot of rain yesterday. And the temperatures are, even the last time I've been here raining season, it's never been this chilly. So, I'm getting all the wear out of those clothes that I thought I would rarely wear here in Ghana, which is like the jeans. I never wear jeans and jean jackets. So just so you know, travelers, in case you come in the July, August, if you don't love heat, this is a time to come. And if you do come, be sure to bring a jacket because it could get chilly. So just some travel tips for us local citizens out there trying to explore the world. And this conversation is off of the heels of what I would call kind of an Ed Week. One of our recent guests, Laureen Adams, Dr. Lori, was part of we mentioned the International Educators Summit that her organization was putting on. And I spent some time with educators and met some new educators over the last week. And so we're continuing that trend with another educator here on the podcast. So let me get to his bio and we'll take it from there. For nearly a decade, he has served as a middle school math teacher and currently is the founder of Identity Talk Consulting, a global educational consulting firm that specializes in developing K-12 teachers into identity-affirming educators. Throughout his 17-year career as a classroom teacher, author, and consultant, he's worked in the United States, Ethiopia, Sierra Leone, and Zambia. Additionally, he has earned numerous accolades for his work, which include being honored as the 2019 National Member of the Year by Black Educators Rock, Inc., and being recognized as a top education influencer by Brightbeam in 2021 and 2022. His newest book, Learning to Relearn, Supporting Identity in a Culturally Affirming Classroom, recently won the 2025 IPPY Award for Best Education Commentary Book and the 2024 Foreword Indies Gold Book Award for Best Education Book. I love it. We got an award-winning author here today, folks, and we're talking all about education. Kwame Sarfo-Mensah, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Florence. It's an honor to be a part of the podcast. I'm a huge fan of it. Listen to many episodes, so I'm glad to finally be on the platform.
Lovely, lovely. So let's jump right in. Let's get started. Where are you from? Where are you local? And what is your craft?
So where am I from? I grew up in the States in Connecticut. So more specifically, Brookfield, Connecticut. So I'm a New Englander. Now, that's where I'm from, that would be Ghana.
Okay. So, Ghanaian. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So both my parents, born and raised in Ghana, grew up there. They went through high school there. And after high school, they came to the States, started a family. And that's how I was born along with my 3 other siblings. So that's how that came about. Now, as far as my craft professionally, I am an educator. So I worked in the classroom for well over a decade. Started out as a teaching assistant, like many people do, and then eventually worked my way up to become a full-time classroom teacher. Taught middle school math for about a decade in school in Philadelphia and in Boston. And then 6 years ago, I pivoted toward consulting, which is what I do now through my firm, Identity Talk Consulting. So I've been able to work with more than 35 different schools across the globe. And I just love being able to impact the lives of teachers and build their capacity so they can become the best educators they can be.
So 2 follow-up questions. One is, you didn't tell us where you're local. Where are you local?
I am local in Lusaka, Zambia, currently.
Okay. I've had one other guest, actually 2 guests that are Zambian. And so it'll be interesting to hear your perspective as a non-Zambian discussing Zambia. And the other is, where is your Ghana?
Where is my Ghana?
Yes.
My Ghana is in my soul. And
I knew you were going to answer that way. No, what I meant was, where geographically is your Ghana?
Geographically?
So you said you're from Ghana. Yeah.
So
where's your family from in Ghana?
Ashanti region.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So
okay.
Both my parents grew up just outside of Kumasi.
Okay. Just outside of Kumasi. Now that's a big outside of Kumasi is a big place. So and we know the Ashanti region is large. And the reason I'm asking is because yesterday a couple of my cousins and my sister and I traveled to our paternal village.
Oh.
And yeah, because we wanted to learn more. Our father's family was more nomadic, right? So they were all farmers. They were farmers, but he is from Akwamu, so we
Oh.
went to Aquamufie.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, and that's where our grandfather is from,
Nice.
and our paternal grandfather. We never he never he never took any of his children there. My grandfather meaning he never took any of his children there. He never went back there after he had migrated from there to an area called Kojoashon, which is above between say Masamahan, Pokwasi, and Kaswa. So that region, it's a farming region. So that's where when my dad goes to the village, that's his village. And so it's there and then also in Samaboy, which is in the western region. So that my father's people migrated and they were farmers there. So my father's siblings are on that farm, they farm there. And so there's the link between those two places, right? And then my paternal grandmother, she's Ga. I'm named for her, Ameale. And so that's that story. But we'd never, so I know my Ga, but I didn't know that Akan side of me. So we met with the Queen Mother. It was a special time.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Akan and Ga. All right.
And Fanti, I'm toasted. As my mother would say that, I was like, what do you mean? And then, I mean, Fanti is also Akan, but Fanti is Fanti, right? So my maternal grandfather is Ga, and my maternal grandmother is Fanti. And then my paternal grandmother is Ga, and my paternal grandfather is Akan. So specifically, Akwamufia.
Yeah. So with both my parents, my mother grew up in Insama.
Insama, okay. Mm-hmm.
And then my father grew up in Mampong.
Okay, so you kind of heal people too.
There you go.
There you go. Yeah. All right. Cool. So we'll have links to those areas. You got a little geography tour of Ghana in this conversation, so that'll be in the show notes. So that is your Ghana. Wonderful. So let's talk more about this craft of yours as an educator. 10 years as a middle school math teacher. What first inspired you to become an educator? You know, you grew up in a family, I'm sure education was like a big thing, but how did you find yourself becoming an educator?
To be honest, Florence, that wasn't the first thing that came to mind as far as a career. When I was growing up, I was very much into sports. Still am to this day, but especially when I was growing up, I grew up playing basketball, grew up playing football, American football, and baseball. So those were my three main sports growing up. Played all three sports all the way through to high school. Even played a couple years of varsity football. And once I got to my senior year of high school, probably a little bit earlier than that, I realized that I was going to have a career in athletics. So it would be wise to pivot into something else. So when I first enrolled at Temple University in Philadelphia, I actually enrolled as an actuarial science major for the simple fact that my father was an actuary. So I figured, well, because he did it, maybe I should try it out. And then I realized this is probably not what I want to do. So before I even started my first day of school, I changed my major to mathematics, and I would end up with mathematics throughout my entire undergrad. And the only reason why I chose that is because I was great at mathematics throughout my K to 12, pretty much a student in math, and it always came easy to me. In high school, I would have people come to me asking if I could tutor them in math. And there were some cases where they even paid me to tutor them. So that was always something that came easy. But then growing up in elementary school, I actually started off my career with the IEP. So for those who are in education, I had a learning support plan during my first 4 grades. So all throughout elementary school. And it was around speech expression. So I was the kid who was nonverbal or defaulted to drawing pictures and other visuals. as a way to not have to talk to people.
Mm.
And I did that for number of years before I started to become more verbal. And during that same time, I went through my share of colorism because I was so much darker than everybody else in my
Yeah.
school. And of course, some racism as well. And then being a first generation Ghanaian American, I had all the Lion King jokes because I was growing up in the 90s
Mm.
during my elementary
Mm-hmm.
school year.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
Lion King was the movie
Mm-hmm.
back then. So there was a lot of jokes around Africa. So they would associate the movie to, my
Mm.
family.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that was rough. That was rough
Yeah.
having to deal with that. But then eventually I was able to exit out of my IEP program and go into the gen ed track.
Okay.
So
And when about was that? Was that in middle school or?
yes, so when I started middle school, that's when I made a trip to get in. So after my fourth grade year. After my sixth grade year, my father holds a family meeting and he lets all of us know. So at this time, it's my older brother and my younger sister and my mom. He's basically telling us he's going to go into early retirement here in the States so that he can move back to Ghana and start his own business with his high school buddies. So that was 1995. So I'm 12 years old at the time. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to move all the way to Ghana, away from my friends, all these people I've grown up with to start a new life.
Mm.
So my youngest sister and I ended up moving to Ghana in 1995. And we ended up spending the next 3 years there. So as you can imagine, it was a bit of a culture shock. Even though I grew up with my
In the
parents
culture?
in the culture and the
Yeah.
food and everything, to be there was different because I've been socialized as an American.
Right.
Although I knew where I came from ancestrally, my whole socialization process was very much in American culture. So to come to Ghana
Mm-hmm.
where now you stand out like a thorn and you have to adjust,
Mm-hmm.
quickly. It was a little bit rough the first few months. And then I started going to school in Ghana. Now I didn't go to a fancy international school with all the expats. I was in a local government school. I mean, high end private school, but still government. And had to wear the uniform, the brown short, cocoa shorts, and, the all white, yellow shirt.
Yeah.
And, you couldn't have your hair looking like this. It had to be short,
Right.
army cut.
Yeah.
Your sleeves had to
Uh-huh.
be above
Uh-huh.
the elbow. Shorts had to be above the kneecap. So very strict rules. And they had to wear a belt. So during that time, this is mid 90s. So for those who aren't familiar with not just Ghana, but really just West African culture, just African culture at the time,
Mm-hmm.
there's corporal punishment. Every teacher had a cane. So you can imagine me at 12 years old seeing teachers holding canes or switches in their hand, and they
Mm-hmm.
have the full authority to beat you. So that was a bit intimidating, but I learned real quickly what not to
How to
do,
stay away from it. Right.
how to stay out of trouble, because I didn't want any of the smoke. But, there are times where you still got caught up because maybe one person in your class did something wrong and then the whole class gets punished. So, yeah, I'd end up getting beaten. But what's weird is I was the type of kid that just wanted to fit in. I didn't want any special
Mm.
treatment because of where I came from. And of course, when people heard me talk, they knew right away, oh, you're not from here. You didn't grow up here. We are Brody. So, they speaking to you
Mm-hmm.
and they telling
Yes,
you like,
exactly.
oh, we are Brody. No free a bro trip. Like, they let
Yes.
you know you
You
from
from
abroad.
abroad. Yeah,
Right.
you're from uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So of course you get that treatment. And I'm like, yeah, I am from there, but I'm trying to be connected to my classmates. I'm trying to be connected to y'all. So if everybody had to get beaten with a cane, now I guess I'm gonna get beaten too. I didn't want
Mm.
anybody rescuing
Mm-hmm.
me or giving me any special treatment. I wanted to be treated just like everybody else. That's really how I felt because I just wanted to be connected with people. And, I was able to fit in pretty well. And to this day, I still have friends who I talk to on social media from my classes 30 years ago. Now we all grown with families, and we're able to reminisce on those times, especially when I'm able to come back to Ghana and connect with some of my classmates. We're able
Mm-hmm.
to have those
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
conversations. But what was interesting about that time was the fact that when I was in the States, you felt like an outcast because of colorism and because of even racism, and also being neurodiverse, being in a special education setting,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Then I
Mm-hmm.
come to Ghana where I look like everybody, but then once I open my mouth, I'm now other because of the fact that I'm American, because of the fact that I have
Yeah.
an American passport and I'm able to have access to certain spaces and I have privileges that my classmates do not have. There's a difference in class that I have to navigate. So in pretty much every situation I was in, I always had this feeling of trying to fit in, just trying to belong. That's been a
Mm-hmm.
recurring theme throughout my life, especially when I got back to the States. Because here's the kicker.
Mm.
I get back after the 3 years. Now I'm 14 and I'm entering sophomore year of high school.
Right. Yeah.
I ended up going to a predominantly white school in a small town in Connecticut called Windsor Locks, where the high school had an enrollment of 500 students, and out of 500 students, I'd say maybe 10 of them were black.
Wow.
So that's what I had to deal with for 3 years. So now I'm in another situation where I'm trying to find my way. And in the process of doing that, I'm being othered again because now I'm the only black kid in most of my classes. When I go to the lunchroom, I'm sitting at a table with all the black kids. So
Mm.
kind of like
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Beverly Daddy Otato's book. Why do all the black kids sit together in the cafeteria?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I lived that because that was a place where I felt like I can feel belonging because I'm in a space with people that I have an affinity to, just based off of racial background. But then when we talk to each other, our differences
Right.
are
Right.
so many differences in
Yeah.
terms of just our lived experience. So you have some who lived in that town all their life, so their socialization process was totally different, and then you have someone like myself who's been out the country and has had a wealth of experiences, and I'm coming in sharing that, and they're not able to relate. That was really my K to 12. A lot of migration, a lot of different pivots and different change of scenery, but all those shaped me to become who I am today. And when I think about my education journey and how I interact with students, a lot of it is informed by my own experience being someone who has felt other, being someone who has been bullied, being someone who has been ostracized from different social spaces. I bring those experiences with me in every classroom I've been in as a teacher.
Wow, what a story, Kwame. I mean, I can absolutely relate to this otherness. Particularly, I I I grew up in Colorado and my all of my education fortunately was very mixed. I will say that because I was accelerated, I experienced that, very few handful of black kids in those classes throughout my education. Two key things that I'm curious about. One, first of all, let's clarify what an IEP is for our listeners.
Yes, I'm
Yes,
sorry, I was
please.
speaking of acronyms.
No
So
problem.
IEP for my non-education friends means individual education plan. So essentially, it's a learning support plan for students who may have intellectual or physical disabilities. So it's a way that allows for students who are in that realm to receive accommodations and supports in the classroom.
Thank you. Building on that, I wonder because I would say early in my education, coming from a bilingual home, and I want to ask you how many languages you speak because my parents opted not to speak our local languages with us in the house. So we didn't grow up. My sister understood it because she's older and still understands very well. But a lot of the motivation for me being here is the fact that my parents didn't speak to me. So I don't have a mother tongue necessarily of their language and speaking. And so I am not sure if early on, this is in first grade, I had a first grade teacher that I think race was part of the challenge because maybe she'd never taught an African child at that time. I wasn't marginalized necessarily, but I knew that she was treating me differently because she assumed that I wasn't up to snuff because there was other languages spoken and there were Latino families and Asian families as well in my classroom. So I noticed she wasn't as, I want to say biased against those children, but definitely I felt it. And it took a while for me to recover my own confidence. I was always confident. My mother was always like, oh, don't mind those people because the same kind of bullying around skin color, everything, all of that, which still exists. But to this day, well, my mother was, everyone's mom is the greatest, but my mom was the greatest because she would always say, you are royalty. Don't ever forget that. And so don't ever think that you're less than this. So I was always proud and came with it. And so eventually got to where I needed to be, was always, and that kept. So your IEP, do you speak your parents' language? Do you speak Tree? And do you think that played into it at all? Your reserve with words versus other forms of expression. And then there's the layer of being a young Black boy. That's also another thing.
Yeah. So as far as whether I speak my family's home language, the answer is not as well as I should. It's a struggle. It's a struggle. And that's another part of my experience with being other. So being in Ghana, not being able to speak Tree, and you have really the older generation criticizing you because then they're wondering how come your parents didn't teach you, or how come you
Yes,
don't know
right.
your language, but you have this very iconic name, right?
Mm-hmm.
You are Kwame
Mm-hmm.
Kakai Sarfo-Mensah. How do you
Yes.
not know your language? So I deal with that as well. I still deal with that every time I go to Kotaka and I show them my American passport. And then I go through this line of interrogation. So it's still something that's a part of me. But for my parents, they didn't teach us Cree or try to impose that on us because I think it goes back to their experience being immigrants. So when they first came to the States in the late 60s, they had a very hard time finding employment, both my mom and my dad. And part of it was just the bias that employees had about where they came from. Now, realizing,
Mm-hmm.
well,
Mm-hmm.
Ghana is a British colony, so they did learn English during their schooling. But because of the bias that these employers had, they still had their own perception of what Ghana is or Africa is at that time. So my parents opted not to teach us Tree because they felt like you're in the United States. You need to learn English in order to be able to navigate the society, in order to deal with the same trials and tribulations that we dealt with. So that was their rationale for not teaching us. But now when I think back and being a father with two sons, and I struggle to even pass down some of that language, even though I know some things is not as much as I feel I should. That's something that's tough because you want to be able to learn the language and master it so that you can just pass that down. So that's something that I still struggle with. I mean, I've tried to do online Tree courses and build it up in that way, but it's still something that's tough. So that's one of the things that I wish my parents were more forceful about. But I definitely understand why they opted not to go that route.
Right.
They did what they thought
Right.
was the best thing, and in the end, we still ended up having a really good childhood, and they put us in the
Mm-hmm.
best positions to be successful in what we're doing. And, all of us are doing really well. So you can't fault it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is the grace that we have for them because when we look at what's going on in the country now in the US, I mean, not much changes. And so I can see where immigrant families might still even feel the same way because this is the world that we continue to have to confront based on what colonization has done to the Black diaspora in particular, but people of otherness, if we want to say that, all over. So interesting. So I want to talk more about math. let's talk more about the math. First, I want to ask you, what is your favorite math? As having been a math teacher, what was your favorite math?
For me, my favorite math subject is algebra.
Okay, and why?
I just like working with equations and expressions.
Hmm. I had a very interesting conversation with a math teacher maybe last summer, and he said his favorite was trigonometry. And so I was curious. I was like, that's interesting. And mine might be geometry, just because of the spatial aspects of it. So is it the equations and I say that also because of the practical applications of what geometry does and offers in a lot of life. But yeah, that's curious. I'm curious. I just wanted to ask that because I every time I meet a math teacher, someone who loves math, I ask them what their favorite math is because everyone has a different answer and for different reasons. So you are a calculator. That is a lot of what algebra does. It creates functions that
Yep.
right? It's about creating functions that
Function.
approximate
Mm-hmm.
approximate reality or information. So cool. I want to understand now more about how you came to be living and working and playing where you currently are. So you were set up really well to have this life with this very diverse education and background, living in Ghana, living in the States, and now you find yourself in Zambia. So why the where? How did you come to be living, working, and playing where you currently are?
Going back to what I mentioned in the beginning, in 2019, my
Mm.
whole family moved abroad and we actually started our journey in Ethiopia.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And the reason why we're abroad is because my wife got a great opportunity with the US Peace Corps, which is actually where
Oh,
she
okay.
served. She actually served as a Peace Corps volunteer
Ah,
20
okay.
years ago in Zambia. So there is a story.
Okay. Okay.
But we started our journey in Ethiopia. So we were in Addis Ababa for about 2.5 to 3 years. That was from 2019 to about 2020. I'm gonna say 2021. And we're pretty much spending half our time in the States and half our time in Addis because it was during this time where COVID hit.
Yeah, the
So
pandemic,
when
right.
COVID hit, we ended up having to depart from Addis, and we were in the States for 10 months before coming back to Addis. And then we were there for maybe 9 months. And then next thing you know, there was a civil war with Tigray and Amhara.
Yes.
So we were actually in
Right.
Addis at that time, and that actually forced us back out and back into the States,
Mm.
and we didn't get a chance to finish our tour there. So we actually ended up back in Boston. And it was during that time where we decided to move to another country. So that's when we came across Freetown, Sierra Leone. So we ended up moving to Sierra Leone middle of 2022. We were there for about 2.5 years. And while that was a better experience, it did come with its challenges as well, because for anyone that knows about the history of Sierra Leone, the recent history of Sierra Leone over the past quarter century, they've gone through their own civil war. They've also had an Ebola epidemic.
Yes.
And then,
Yes.
of course, COVID hit as well. So, as a result
Hmm.
of these different crises, they've been hit from a developmental standpoint. So, when you go there, you see that there's a lack of certain infrastructure. You see that the roads and the facilities aren't up to where they need to be. There's a whole lot of development taking place. So, they're still recovering from all these things I mentioned. And then also, there's like a sense of like a learned helplessness, right? Like when you walk around,
Mm-hmm.
like
Hmm.
you sense this aura of pain. You sense despair.
Hmm.
So in Sierra Leone, they have a saying where basically it's like, how do I say it? So they have this saying where if you're going through some type of struggle or if something bad happens, they have this saying where they're basically just saying it is what it is. So it's like, oh, Alpha do. So it's Creole. Like Alpha do, like pretty much, yeah, like it's messed up, but that's just what it is. And then they kind of add humor to it, add humor to the pain. But it's almost like a learned helplessness, like, oh, we can't really do for ourselves, or this always happens to us. We don't deserve better than what we're experiencing.
Mhm.
This is just our reality, and there's really nothing we can do to change that reality. So it's just a
Wow.
very, so it's just a very like deficit mindset
Yeah.
that
Yeah, yeah,
you're
yeah.
welcome
Yeah,
to.
mhm,
Yeah,
mhm,
and it weighs on you after a while. It weighs on
mhm,
you. So you feel it. And even when you interact with people, you feel it as well. But I will say this about Sierra Leone. I love the fact that it was a lot more chill. We were able to navigate Freetown as a family. We're around water. The beaches are beautiful. And there is a lot of culture in Sierra Leone. I mean, especially when you think about the education system. I mean, there was a time many years ago during the independence movement, Pan African period, where you had people, Pan African leaders, coming to Sierra Leone to get an education because at one point it was the mecca of education. Like Fort Bay College in Freetown was like the Princeton of sub-Saharan Africa at one point. People would come there to get education and get their advanced degrees and to see what it looks like now, to see that that landmark has not been preserved, it's just a microcosm of where things are
mm,
in the country.
mhm,
And that's just one
mhm,
example of how things have kind of fallen. But Sierra Leone is a beautiful country. There's so much rich history that is overlooked because of some of the challenges that I've mentioned. But I would say that, my kids definitely enjoy their time in Sierra Leone. They definitely love,
mhm.
they definitely love the food and all the different events that are taking place there, cultural events. So yeah, we enjoyed it there, but it was tough.
Yeah, that's real talk. I mean, it's really recognizing the challenges that we face. And so when I travel around West Africa, particularly to Francophone West Africa, and I know Sierra Leone's not Francophone, but the idea of what Ebola had, where Ebola was that much more devastating and how that impacts this generation. I think Gen Z, definitely Gen Z, because Gen Z is the generation that had to live through it and now is struggling, I believe, with their primary and basic education because they were unable to get to schools in a large degree. So when you were there, were you consulting at all or in the actual, primary and secondary education space or tertiary, any of those levels?
Yeah, I'll be very transparent about that part of the journey. I was trying to consult with different schools, but it was hard to get my foot in the door. So when we first got to Sierra Leone, the goal was to find a job with an international school. And naturally, I went to the American school to see if I could get a position there. But because there were no vacancies available, I could never get a position at the school. So I ended up spending a lot of time trying to network and make connections. So there are a lot of days where, wife goes to work, kids are in school. I'm at home trying to figure out what am I going to do today. I gotta make this day work. And this has been one of the recurring things being a trailing spouse. So, which has been a part of my identity while being abroad. And that's a whole nother story there. But I was just trying to figure out what to do so that I could maintain my sanity. So I started off just trying to connect with people who are at different schools, and you will try to build rapport. And, when you're in Africa, networking is very different from what it is in the States. Like in the States, you can do everything pretty much in front of a computer screen. You can send documents, do this. It's not as personal, right? But when you're in, but when you're in Africa, everything has to be in person. You got to meet
FaceTime
people.
matters. Yeah.
FaceTime matters. You got to meet people at the restaurant. You got to meet people at the cafe. You got to get lunch with them. You got to grab a drink with them, have conversation, get to know them. And usually it'll take you 2, 3 months before you get to the real reason why you want to network with them. But you have to go through that process. And that was something that I struggle with because for me, it's like, man, why am I wasting my time talking to this person about this and that? Like, let's get to the main thing.
Yeah.
But that's not how
Yeah.
it works. So having to get used to that, but also having to understand that when you do make the effort to connect and you're building rapport, and let's say the person that you've been talking to for the past few months just ghosts you one day. They just
Wow. Okay.
ghost you. You still can't take it personal
Right.
because in
That's
the
true.
end, they look at you, they know that you have the credentials, they know that you're highly competent, they know that you're qualified, and in their mind, they're probably thinking, I can't afford you. Well, we don't have the money to pay you. So rather than tell you directly, because it's very own, it's very much an indirect culture
Yeah.
when it comes to communication. So rather than just saying to your face, hey, listen, like real talk, like we don't have the money to pay you to do this work, they just kind of exit stage left. And then you're left wondering what happened. We just had a great conversation the other day. Now I text, you don't respond back. I call, go straight to voicemail. Well, what's going on? So this was something that just kept happening to me. And it got to a point where I got so frustrated. I said, man, forget this. I'm going to just focus on trying to get this consulting up. So I was spending a lot of time in front of the computer, but that didn't help either because I'm trying to talk to American schools and American organizations, but now there's a time zone difference. And for some
Right.
of the jobs that they're
Yeah.
looking for, they want you to actually be within the country, even if it's a remote position.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
my options became even more limited. So that was really a tough part of the journey. But I will say this, right before we moved, I was able to spend a full year as an instructional coach at a local international school in Freetown. And that's what allowed me to get back into the school setting on a daily basis. What was cool about the job was I was able to work 4 or 5 hours a day. And my main job was to provide mentoring and instructional coaching to a cohort of 15 teachers at this international school. So I would just go into their classrooms a couple times throughout the week and take some notes, watch them teach. And then at the end of the week, we have the brief sessions where we will talk. I will share some highs, some lows, and then they'll have a chance to talk to me about how they felt about their experience. And we would just, really just sit down and put together a plan for success. And that's really what brought some of that joy back because I was back to doing something that I love to do.
Building. Yeah.
And I think that really allowed me to not only rebuild my confidence, but also it gave me some international experience because before this job, I didn't work in an international school before then. I had done maybe some pro bono workshops with this school here and this school there, but nothing substantial. So this was like the first real job that I had. And now this is going into year 4 of this abroad journey. So just to really put it all in perspective. But yeah, Sierra Leone was interesting. There were a lot of lessons learned. But I will say that once my wife got the news that she would be coming back to Zambia to become country director at the place
Okay.
where she was a volunteer 20 years prior. I think as a family, we were elated.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wow. That's wonderful.
Yeah, yeah.
So you've been in Zambia for how long now?
Since January. It's only been
Oh, wow.
yeah, it's only been about 6 months.
Okay. 6 months back.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So it's new
Relatively new, yeah.
or new-ish.
Newish.
Yeah. New-ish. Yeah, newish.
Yeah,
So this is a good time to ask you about Glocal Speak. So you've been there for a little bit. You're
yeah.
kind of learning new lingo, all that good stuff. So tell us what you hear. We want to hear what you hear. A word, a phrase, or a saying that's become a meaningful part of your local experience, and why or how you come to value it as Glocal Speak.
Yeah, so in Zambia, people are very soft spoken, very friendly, and they very much care about greetings. Greetings are very important. Before you get to any matters of business and other issues, you have to greet.
Mm-hmm.
So the lingua franca here is Nyanja. So Nyanja is
Yanja. Mm-hmm.
the lingua franca. So if you're greeting somebody, you would greet them by saying like Boka Bwanje or Dile Bwanje. So it depends on the time of the day. And then usually when you do that, they respond back, and now you're able to talk about what you want to talk about. So one greeting.
Yeah.
And then also when you are talking with people who are your elders, for example, usually when you do that, there's a prefix that you put in front of the person's name. So, for example, if I'm talking to you, Florence, right? I would say, "Bye, Florence." So people use
Ba.
either "bye" or "bo."
Okay. So ba is feminine and bo is
I'm
masculine.
assuming, and I mean, don't quote me, but I think people use it interchangeably. But from what I've seen
Oh,
so
okay.
far, "bye" is what people use most of the time, and then sometimes people use "bo."
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So, like, if someone's name is Chris and he's older, he's an elder,
An
I
elder.
would
Yeah.
say, "Oh, hey,
Yeah.
bye, Chris."
Uh-huh. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of like bra, like similar to what we do here, right? Because
Kind
for
of
the
like
most part,
in Ghana,
you
like you
typically
say,
don't hear
"Bye."
people say their
Yeah.
yeah, like Bra Kwame,
Yeah.
sister Florence or auntie or uncle. We hear less of that, but more sister Bra
Yeah.
and sis. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Same
Okay.
concept.
Yeah. Yeah. We recognize in these parts the years. Yeah, that we're not all in the same generation. Let's call it that, you
Yeah.
know. So, okay, interesting. So we'll be able to greet somebody and greet them properly if we come to Lusaka.
That's right. That's right.
Yes, nice. Nice, nice, nice. Okay. So now you're living there and over this time it seems like you have honed a new kind of craft because you've given us a good understanding of what it is like to navigate kind of the work life process and so as a consultant, as an entrepreneur, as an author, where how did you what was the inspiration that put pen to paper for you?
As an author, so it goes back to I have to take it back to 2017. So near the end of 2017, my first son was born. So I was actually on paternity leave during this time. And this is my 8th year teaching at this time. And I was on paternity leave for about 12 weeks. So I used all my, I was about to say FMLA, my family medical leave. I used it all up to make sure that I was there with my newborn son, with my wife, making sure that we could be together during these formative years or months for our newborn because we want to make sure there's a routine. And I wanted him to know that he had a father that's very involved, very active because usually with men, when you have a newborn child, you don't get 3 months. Typically, you're out of work for 2, 3 weeks and then you're back at work.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
said, nah,
Yeah.
that's not going to work because we have to establish a routine.
Mm-hmm.
And if my wife can't go to sleep, then I guess why I can't go to sleep. I got to be prepared to
Mm-hmm.
relieve her
Mm-hmm.
so that she can get rest and then vice versa. So, recognizing the importance of just being present and really wanting to be active, that was important to me, especially considering the fact that I didn't have I don't have the great relationship with my father.
Mm.
It was very important to me to be there and to support my wife with the newborn. So that was something that I really thought about. But getting back to the writing, I wrote my first book during that fraternity leave.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And the book was called very book was called Shaping Teacher Identity, A Lessons That Help Define the Teacher in You. And I wrote it at a time where I felt like I had a lot to talk about. And it was the first time where I was able to sit down and really reflect. Because as a teacher, as you
Mhm.
know, we're always on the move.
Yeah, you're in it. Yeah.
You're lesson
Hmm.
planning, you're making phone calls, there's always something to do. So to have this extended period of time where you have to do any of that, it freed my mind to write this book. So I
Hmm.
wrote it within those 3 months. By the time I got back into the classroom, all that had to be done was editing, and I was able to publish it right before the end of 2018. So that was my first taste of writing. And what I realized was when you publish a book, people look at you differently. People really view you as a thought leader. People give you more attention. People want to learn more about who you are just because you just publish a book. And it doesn't even have to be a bestseller. So once I realized that this book could be a foundation for something bigger, then I started thinking about, well, how could I create a business that revolves around the different concepts of this book? Because I started to do pro bono
Hmm.
workshops in neighboring school districts. So I would take days off from my daytime job at one district in order to provide PD to another district.
Wow.
So
Okay.
I was
Hmm.
doing that.
Hmm.
I started to talk to different pre-service teachers in different universities in Boston. And then the next thing you know, people started asking me, well, how much do you charge? That's when I realized, okay, I need to formalize this work. So I started my LLC, which turned out to be Identity Talk Consulting. From there, I started to talk to more schools. I started to lead more sessions, attend conferences, and that's when it started to build up.